Good afternoon. Today I'm going to talk about the first project in a series of studies that my collaborator Lee Fabrega and I have conducted on the topic of stealing thunder. In particular, this study looks at how the specificity of a confession influences the efficacy of this tactic within the domain of politics. So what is stealing thunder? Revealing potentially damaging information about oneself before others are able to reveal the same information is known as stealing thunder. Now, one important goal of this tactic is to influence others to perceive oneself in a more favorable light in order to mitigate the damaging effects should others reveal the same information first. So one important goal of stealing thunder is being able to control the flow of information. In fact, prior research suggests this feature is actually so important that political figures have been perceived as more honest and credible when revealing self-incriminating information first. Additionally, the media is also less likely to pursue, to sensationalize, and to distribute information about the political figure. But this tactic has also been shown to increase people's willingness to re-elect a political figure to office. Now, beyond the political domain, researchers have found that stealing thunder can lead mock jurors to view the accused individuals in a more positive light, as well as less guilty, even to the extent that sentencing decisions are influenced. Now, despite research showing that stealing thunder is effective at reducing negative evaluations, we constantly see examples in the media where this tactic could be used with great effectiveness, but is not, and often at great cost to the person involved in the scandal. Take, for example, George Bush and the DUI scandal that emerged during his presidency, or New York Attorney General Anthony Weiner and the sexting scandal, presidential candidate John Edwards cheating on his wife, Hillary Clinton's email scandal during the recent presidential election, and Donald Trump's alleged collusion with Russian hackers, apparently to rig the election in his favor. But of course, who could forget Bill Clinton's denial of his affair with Monica Lewinsky, only to have later information reveal that he did in fact sleep with that woman. So clearly stealing thunder has important real-world implications. Yet, despite the fact that evidence points to the efficacy of this as an influence technique, comparatively little has been done to influence, or rather investigate, the processes and boundary conditions under which it may function. Now, of the factors that may influence the effectiveness of stealing thunder, one important feature that has largely been overlooked is the actual content of the message. Now, this is particularly surprising given that a large body of research within the attitudes literature has shown that the content of a message matters. Now, what we propose is that the specificity of the information is going to have an impact on the effectiveness of this tactic. Our belief is that confessing the specific details of one's transgression should be more effective than only general or vague confessions, because by providing more detailed information, this may suggest that the person is more transparent, more trustworthy, more sincere. This may also enhance perceptions of credibility, as well as impacting other judgments that can enhance the evaluator's willingness to perhaps forgive the individual or impact the severity of penalization, or of course in the case of a political candidate, influence their chances at re-election. Now, a specific confession may be especially beneficial in cases where information is later brought to light by a third party, which may have particularly negative impact if the original confession was only made at a very general level of detail. So to test this, we started off by looking at whether confessions made at either a very general or vague level of detail versus specific confessions influence the people's evaluations of the source when the intensity of the transgression was comparatively moderate. We used a message that was pre-tested to be comparatively moderate in intensity, involving a political candidate who misappropriated public funds for personal use. So first, all participants received a passage in which the political candidate stated that he opposed the excess funding of public funds for personal use, and in fact was implementing a plan to hold all public officials accountable for their spending. Now, participants were then randomly assigned to receive a passage in which the political candidate confessed at either a very general level or in specific detail to having misused public funds for personal use, or a newspaper first revealed this negative information, which was our thunder condition, or of course, no negative information was provided, which constituted the control condition. Participants in the general and specific confession conditions then received the same specific information provided by the third party, which in fact reflects stealing thunder because they're providing the information first, later followed up by a third party providing that information, and all groups then provided their evaluations on this political candidate across a variety of dimensions, after which we obtained a measure of attitude towards the candidate. So for each of the variables we examined, we tested our predictions using a one-way ANOVA with group type as our independent variable, and in this case, ratings of punishment as our dependent variable. Now, I should point out that higher scores in this case reflect a greater likelihood that the political candidate should be punished. So starting with our control condition, given that no negative information was provided, we would expect ratings of punishment to be comparatively low, and in fact they were. Now in our thunder condition, which reflects the third party revealing this negative information first, recall that the severity of the issue is comparatively moderate, and so in turn we might expect the severity of punishment to be in the moderate to perhaps high range, and as it turns out, this is what the data revealed. Now what happened when the candidate confessed at a very general level of detail? Planned contrast revealed no difference in the severity of punishment, or rather, the likelihood of punishment relative to when a third party confessed the information first. But of course what we anticipated was that making a confession at a very specific level of detail should enhance, or in this case lower, ratings of punishment, but we found no difference. Now here we use the same one-way ANOVA as in the prior analyses, but with ratings of severity of punishment as our DV. Once again, we expected our control condition to produce comparatively low ratings of severity of punishment, which we found. And of course, the third party, when they first revealed the information, this should ramp up the severity of punishment, which was in fact the case. And when a person confessed at a very general level, here we would anticipate perhaps no difference in the level of severity, which our data revealed. And again, mapping onto the prior analyses, we see when the political candidate confessed in a specific level of detail, this didn't actually impact the severity of punishment whatsoever. So we have no difference across all three groups. So thus far, confessing at either a general or a specific level doesn't appear to have much effect when compared with a third party for the severity of punishment as well as the likelihood of punishment. Now, for this analysis, what we did was use ratings of forgiveness as our dependent variable. And in our thunder condition, we would expect that when a third party first revealed the negative information, ratings of forgiveness should be comparatively low, which they were. And again, when the confederate, or rather when the political candidate confessed at a very general level, we see the same pattern emerging. However, when they confess the specific details of their transgression, what we find is that planned contrasts actually reveal a significant enhancement in participants' willingness to forgive relative to both the general confession as well as when the third party first revealed the damaging information. Now, running the same analyses with ratings of transparency as a dependent variable, we find that, as you might expect, when a third party first reveals this negative information, the political candidate is not going to be perceived as particularly transparent. And as in the prior analyses, planned contrast revealed no difference when they confessed this information at a general level, but once again, when they confessed the specific details of their transgression, they're revealed as significantly more transparent than when they confessed at a general level, as well as when a third party first revealed the information. And a similar pattern of effects emerge when we look at trustworthiness as a dependent variable. When a third party first revealed the information, they were not viewed as particularly trustworthy, and similar pattern of effects emerged when a general confession was made. However, once again, providing a confession at a specific level of detail enhanced perceptions of trustworthiness significantly greater than when only a general confession was made or when a third party first revealed the information. We see the same effects emerge again with credibility. You're not particularly credible if a third party reveals the information before you do, and if you confess at a general level, that really does nothing to enhance people's perceptions of your credibility relative to if a third party revealed this information. But if you confess the specific details of your transgression, you're viewed as significantly more credible than if you only present the information at a vague level of detail, or if a third party reveals this information first. And again, the same patterns emerge with sincerity. A general confession produced no difference in ratings of sincerity relative to when a third party revealed the information, but again, confessing the specific details ramps up the perceptions of sincerity relative to both the general confession as well as when the third party reveals the information. Now, although we find a similar pattern of effects with honesty, we do in fact see that confessing, even at a general level of detail, appears to enhance perceptions of honesty to a significantly greater extent than when a third party reveals the information. But as in the prior analyses, confessing to the specific details of your transgression increases your perceptions of honesty significantly more than when you confess at only a general level of detail or when a third party first reveals the information. Now, this of course would be particularly important to a political candidate, looking at participants' willingness to re-elect the candidate following the release of negative information. Again, we see a similar pattern as in the prior analyses. If the candidate confesses at a very general or vague level of detail, as we saw in a lot of the previous scandals, Bill Clinton with Monica Lewinsky, Anthony Weiner with the sexting scandal, Hillary Clinton, it seems to run in the family, no? We see actually no difference. If anything, it slightly trends in the opposite direction. But when they confess at a specific level of detail and reveal everything that they've done to the public, we actually see a significant enhancement in people's willingness to re-elect them relative to when they make a general confession, but it may actually not provide that much of a benefit relative to when a third party reveals this information. And finally, when looking at how this pattern effect plays out in terms of participants' overall attitude towards the candidate, once again, confessing at a very general level buys you nothing relative to when a third party reveals the information, but we do see a significant enhancement in participants' overall attitude towards the candidate when the candidate confessed at a specific level of detail. However, this pattern also includes significant enhancement in attitudes relative to the third party as well. I just wanted to point that out. So taken together, these data suggest that regardless of whether you confess at a general or specific level of detail, or a third party reveals the information, the likelihood of punishment is going to be roughly the same, and the severity of that punishment will probably not be much different. But when it comes to forgiveness, you're much better off confessing the specific details than making a very general or vague confession, and certainly far better off than when a third party first reveals the damaging information. And we saw the same pattern effects emerge across a variety of attributes such as credibility, trustworthiness, transparency, sincerity, and even overall attitude, such that specific confessions led to more favorable evaluations relative to both general confessions and when a third party revealed the damaging information first. Now, perhaps of greatest importance to a person involved in a political scandal, these data suggest that confessing the specific details may lead to a greater likelihood of re-election compared to if they only confessed the general details, and it may not provide much of a benefit relative to when the third party provided the information first. Now, moving forward, we do in fact have data that replicate these effects in a follow-up study, and also extend this by testing the effects of confessing at a more intermediate level of detail. Several ongoing projects are looking at how the interplay between the specificity of a confession and the intensity of the issue can interact to influence these evaluations as well. For example, a political candidate may have misappropriated $15,000 versus only $200. And finally, we're testing whether these patterns generalize to domains other than politics, such as romantic relationships, professional sports, the military, and so forth. And that brings us to the conclusion of today's presentation. Thank you so much.